All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. And as a prompt for our conversation, which is on 2021 flood outlook and implications, let's listen to this background report by Ekene Ndulwe.
In recent years, flooding has become a major hazard in Nigeria due to growing population, rapid urbanization, and extreme weather events. It was estimated that Nigeria suffered combined losses of more than $16.9 billion in 2012 alone. Since then, increased flood events coupled with lack of coping capacity and vulnerability of the people have continued to put many lives and property at risk. The 2021 annual flood outlook from the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency projected that 121 local government areas in 27 states and FCT fall within highly probable risk areas, while 302 local government areas in the 36 states of the Federation, including the FCT, fall within moderately probable flood risk areas. The remaining 351 local government areas fall within the low probable risk areas. Furthermore, river flooding is expected in Anambra, Adamawa, Bayelsa, Benue, Delta, Edo, and Jigawa. Other states include Kebbi, Kogi, Kwara, Nasarawa, Niger, Rivers, and Taraba states. Coastal flooding is expected in Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Ondo, Lagos, and River states due to rise in sea level and tidal surge. On account of poor drainage facilities, flash and urban floodings are forecasted to occur in Ibadan, Lagos, Port Harcourt, Sokoto, Kano, and other major cities. Experts have predicted that unusual rainfall may have diverse implications on various sectors, including washing away of agricultural land, contamination of water sources with direct consequences such as waterborne diseases, erosion of roads and critical infrastructure, among other implications. To mitigate the severity of the expected floods, experts from various sectors have engaged in deep analysis with recommendations to assist all stakeholders at national, state, and local governments, as well as community level, in taking proactive measures in disaster preparedness, mitigation, and response activities. Guests on Good Morning Nigeria will speak to the issues in a moment.
Thank you very much, Ekene Ndulwe, for that background. The guests are already here with us in the studios, so let's begin by introducing them. First, I would like to welcome, as always, Engineer Clement Nze. He's Director General of the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Engineer Nze, pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Thank you. Also here with us in the studios, would like to welcome Professor Mansour Bako Matazu. He's the Director General of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET. Prof, delighted to have you this morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
And from the National Emergency Management Agency, we have Al-Hassan Nuhu, who is the Director of Planning, Research, and Forecasting, NEMA. It's a pleasure to have you this morning on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
And again, here in Abuja is another regular face on Good Morning Nigeria. He is Abbas Idris, Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigeria.
All right, gentlemen, once again, I'm delighted to have you with us. We are already now in the middle of the rainy season, if you like. And flooding, of course, is usually precipitated by rainfall. So let's begin with the DG of NIMET. What more should we expect in the course of the rainy season for the year? Are we now in the heaviest part of the rainy season, or the rainy season is just gathering momentum? We do know that there have been some heavy rainfall in different parts of the country. I have no measurement of it, but what is it that we're experiencing and what should we expect?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. As you made mention earlier, if you recall vividly, on 2nd of February, This year we issued out our 2021 seasonal climate prediction, and it was unveiled by our Minister, Senator Hadi Sirika, in which we provided the pattern of the rainfall. And the general pattern as at then was that the country will experience normal to above normal rainfall. And if you divide the country into two, and the southern part of the country experienced two peak periods of rainfall. The beginning of the rain from the south start between late February and early March and reach its first peak by late June. And then the second peak comes around August and possibly September. So while in the north, the season has begun, well established at the north central, and also the extreme northern states are also having their onset now. So, but generally, as we predicted earlier, the other components of the rainfall, which constitute the total rainfall amount and also the rainfall intensity, the main attributes that triggers floods. So, floods mostly come in Nigeria between the month of July and September. And by that time, the rivers upstream in the north are already getting inflow, which now drains downstream into the southern parts of the country. And this combined with the localized rainfall activities in the south and also the occasion rain showers in the north. And this triggers either floods in terms of flash floods as a result of high intensity rain and or as a result of overflowing of rivers, what we call overbankful flow, what NISA normally gives a prediction for. So this July to September is the flood period because you have all the parts of the country having their rainfall activities well established. And I'm sure my brother NISA, they have issued their annual flood outlook, which NIMED contributes as an input into their forecast. So generally, this July to September is the flood periods, whereby you have moisture in the soil, which also contributes to high intensity rain, which triggers different form of floods in terms of flash floods as a result of high intensity rain. Anywhere that 50 millimeter of rain falls within 30 minutes, it triggers floods because of high intensity rain. The high intensity of the raindrops will block the soil pore spaces and now enhance surface runoffs. And that's what we normally see in the country, especially in the south now. Oweri and other parts of the southern parts of the country were flooded last week as a result of this.
Well, now we know the pattern of rainfall, and as you rightly pointed out, that we should be expecting flooding between July and September. So let's bring in the DG of Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency, Clement in there. Now, yours is about the movement of water. Now we hear about the coastal flooding. We also hear about river flooding. Give us an idea of the states and areas that we're expecting to have this kind of flooding, either flash flooding, river flooding, coastal flooding, and perhaps other types of flooding that we normally experience in Nigeria.
Okay, thank you. Now, first of all, there are the states in Nigeria which are contiguous to rivers Niger and Benue and the major tributaries. Kebbi State, which is the first point of entry from Niger into Nigeria. Kebbi, Niger, Kwara. Then coming down to Lokoja, which is Kogi State. On the other part, the other wing of it, that is River Benue, you have Adamawa, Taraba. Then coming down to Benue, to Kogi State. Right from there, moving down south, Delta, Edo, Anambra, Rivers, Bayelsa. This is often the one we call a river flooding, when the rivers Niger and Benue overflow their banks. And like the DG Namet mentioned, by the time of July, August, September, and even at times up to October, the inflow from other countries in Nigeria, in West and Central Africa, should have been arriving in Nigeria at this time. And then within the northern part of Nigeria, rainfall had been established. Most of the states are already experiencing rainfall. So they combine the effect of local rainfall within these states and the inflow from 8 other countries, Guinea, Conakry, Mali, Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Benin Republic. The inflow from all those countries keep arriving to Nigeria about that season. That's the river flooding. And then the coastal flooding, there are states in Nigeria that are bound by the Atlantic Ocean. We'll be talking about the issue of climate change, which is real. Somewhere like Bayelsa and rivers, or even Delta, the high difference between the ocean and the upland, maybe about 1.5 meters or 2.5 meters high, the difference. So once it could be waves, it could be made of the iceberg within the northern part, the Arctic region. The oceans will begin to swell. And then the states that are within, contiguous to the ocean, also the wind speed could cause the ocean to begin to push inland. That's what we call coastal flooding. It only takes place in Ondo State. Then when you talk about the urban flooding, which is also a major issue, most of the states seem not to be prepared for it. Blockage of drainages, structures that are erected within the flood plains, indiscriminate disposal of waste. So most of the major cities in Nigeria, like Lagos, that one usually experiences both coastal and the urban flooding. Talk about Owerri, urban flooding. In Kano, in Sokoto, even Jigawa, Kebbi State, talking about urban flooding, also river flooding for Kebbi State. Like last year, over 450,000 hectares of rice farm were lost to flood. So major cities in Nigeria, because of urbanization, even in Abuja here too, the inflow of people from different places has put more pressure on the land, which doesn't expand. And the first basic need of man, or among the basic needs of man, is shelter. You have to look for somewhere to go and build a house. Whether within the approved plan or not, people have to find a way to go and live. And most of them, they go within the flood plains, where they will use the river available there to make local moats or blocks to build their houses, thereby encroaching on the flood plains.
Okay, Engineer, so thank you very much again for explaining the distinction amongst the various types of flooding that we have. But what is the flooding outlook for this year, in addition to what our correspondent gave in that background report? Whenever I ask this question, I get reminded of some of the dire predictions you have made on Good Morning Nigeria when we've had you over the years. I remember a couple of years ago, after we had a lot of inundation and reports of flooding in different parts of the country, you came here and said, wait, the flooding is still coming. The bigger one is coming. I don't know, Kiran, whether you and I were on set on that occasion. You said the bigger one is still coming. That's because of the reports you were getting from other parts of the country where the River Niger and River Benue both come through. So where are we? Is this year as bad as it was? Indeed, of course, as you said at that time, the bigger flooding actually came. So what should we look at for this year?
Now, first of all, the pressure we made, the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency, which the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adam, unveiled on the 6th of May, 2021. The prediction is saying, or said that about 121 local government areas in Nigeria, they have names anyway, currently across 27 states, including FCT, will experience severe flooding in the course of 2021. And another 302 AGS across the entire country will experience a lesser degree of flooding compared to the other 121. Now, like you rightly mentioned, If by July, or even like in 2019, by June in 2019, there had been heavy catastrophe in Abuja, the issue of Lokogoma, where one director was swept away by the flood. That was as early as June. But it is between July and September that the heavy flood occurs in Nigeria. And God save us that the countries upstream of Nigeria, Nigeria is down, so I keep talking about it. We call what we call Niger Basin. It's like a basin where you wash your hand. Nigeria is situated at that particular point where the wastewater goes out from. All other countries are up. Starting if on River Niger, you have Guinea, where River Niger takes us from. Guinea, it comes to Mali. From Mali, it comes to Niger. On its way, inflow from Burkina Faso and Cote d'Ivoire enters into River Niger. And then comes to Benin for about 40 kilometers or so before entering to Nigeria. So whatever is happening in all those countries, whether it is pollution, whether it is heavy flooding, Nigeria must receive it. Likewise, for River Benue side, River Benue from Cameroon, on its way, inflow from Chad. River Benue doesn't pass through Chad, but inflow from Chad empties into River Benue, and they start coming down to Nigeria through Adamawa. And like in 2019, when we are saying it was Uhuru in Nigeria, there was no more flood. In October, River Benue in Cameroon was overwhelmed to the point that their dam was being threatened, the dam in Cameroon, Kalagdo Dam. They had to open their gate on the 10th of October 2019. And that gate was open for 3 weeks. Nigeria got flooded in October and part of November, which is not supposed to be. Because by then the rains have ceased more or less within the northern part of Nigeria.
All right. Well, we now have a true picture, of what has been predicted and what is being expected with respect to rainfall pattern and, of course, the flooding that you have just explained. It does appear that it's not just because of the rainfall that we have this flooding. You mentioned the fact that other parts of Africa, so many countries you just mentioned, that when the flood starts from those areas, it comes into Nigeria and and floods Nigeria. And from all indications, there's no remedy for that, because of course water has to move from one point to the other. Let me bring in Al-Hassan Nuhu, who is the Director of Planning, Research and Forecasting, NEMA. I'm not sure that NEMA has much to do with respect to prediction, but I can see forecasting here. In your own understanding, what are we in for? The rain, we're just in July, and Chief Nze just said that between July and September, that Nigeria should be expecting heavy flooding. In your own estimation, what are we going to see?
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, Nigeria. We normally in NEMA work in tandem with the Climate Services Agency, the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, and NISA. We provide input to their documents, and thereafter we gather committee of experts across the sectors of the economy, involving the Meteorological Agency and the Hydrological Agency, the Space Agency, and other stakeholders. We task them to digest and sift out in more clearer terms the disaster management implications of both the SCP and the AFO, which they did, and the DG unveiled it. The DG Mustafa Aviv Ahmed unveiled it on last Thursday, which clearly share and delineated responsibilities among the federal, state, and local government, and among ministries, departments, and agencies on what to do. So we are expecting from what the SCP said and AFO that there will be flooding, and we are bracing up to it. Nigeria has an elaborate response mechanism, which indicates how the various sectors will work together the various jurisdictions will work together to ensure that should the flooding comes, what are we going to do to save lives of Nigerians and to provide the necessary succor? We have strategized to produce, to map the critical areas. The highly probable areas have been mapped. We have identified high grounds where we have evacuation centers, where we have temporary shelters if the flood comes. We have engaged the state governments to stockpile as much as NEMA has stockpiled relief materials to be able to provide immediate succor when this disaster struck. And we are also bracing, not just only flood, because the SCP has predicted that there will be below normal rainfall in some parts of the country, in areas like Zamfara, Kebbi, and Sokoto in the northwest. We are also strategizing to stockpile materials, relief materials to provide to those affected with possibly drought spell. When you have below normal rainfall, the implication is that there will be drought spell in some in those areas. So we are bracing for both flood and drought, and we have strategized to make to take actions that will prevent and mitigate this flood, to ensure that if it comes with minimal impact. But should it be around us, we are also prepared to provide, to save lives, to provide succor, and to rehabilitate those who are affected by the disaster.
All right, thank you very much, Al Hassan Nuhu of NEMA. We'll return to you in the course of the conversation. Let's now bring in the Director General of the FCT Emergency Management Agency, Abbas Idris. Abbas Idris, of course, the Federal Capital Territory has been indicated as one of the 121 local government areas that will experience high impact flooding in the course of the year. There are 6 area councils in the Federal Capital Territory. Tell us, what does this mean to you and your organization, and what mitigation measures are already being planned or rolled out?
Well, thank you very much. Let me begin by appreciating NIMET as well as NISA for giving us the seasonal prediction. This time around, NIMET deviated from the tradition of rainfall prediction and giving us the climate prediction, which is very commendable. And then also NISA for giving us the flood outlook promptly. The 2 agencies have now given us the early warning, which is required by the nation. It is now left for the response agencies to do the needful by preparing against those predictions. As for the FCT, it was predicted that 2 area councils, which is Amak and Gwagwalada, are going to have on the red zone of flooding. And when we said Amak, it doesn't mean that the entire Amak is going to be flooded, or Gwagwalada. There are areas that are going to be affected, which is going to be very badly. And for that reason, the FCT Emergency Management Agency, as usual, had gone ahead to bring the stakeholders together. Apart from the assessment that we did before the 2 predictions, we brought stakeholders only last week, Wednesday, and brainstormed on these 2 predictions, the climate outlook as well as the flood outlook, and try to identify the areas, because we have the flood mapping by giving us those probable, most probable, and less probable areas. So it is now left for us to work. The stakeholders brainstormed on the reports and also came out with the reviewed response plan. That is part of the strategy that we have to adopt. We review the response plan to ensure that we are battle ready at any point in time, to ensure that when it comes, or even if we can avoid it, because we discovered that the flooding in the FCT is not a natural flooding. It has to do with urbanization and some indiscriminate waste of the dumping of waste and then building on the waterways. These things can be avoided, and that is why we domesticated everything to be within the stakeholders and ensure that the solution comes out from the stakeholders. And last week, what we did was to really come up with some workable suggestions that are going to really work for the FCT to ensure that we mitigate, if we cannot prevent, at least the disasters within the FCT.
Let me still stay with you about Idris, because we all live in Abuja here. There are other areas you didn't mention where we normally experience the flash flooding. Area 8, for instance. Chifinze mentioned Lokogoma. You now talked about Bakolada. What about Gwarimpa area? And if you are talking about preventive measures, what are those measures that you are taking? We have not seen sandbags. We have not seen any physical sign of mitigation, because, of course, it's been predicted. And obviously, we are expecting to have this flood in Abuja. And you also mentioned the fact that Abuja flooding is not a natural flooding. You mentioned the causes, one of which is building on waterways. What is the FCT doing to ensure that people do not continue to build on waterways? And of course, we should have adequate waste disposal to avoid the kind of flooding you mentioned.
Yes, thank you very much. You'll agree with me that in 2018, where we had flooding in Lokogoma, it was devastating. It was as a result of lack of infrastructure. But when we moved in, I discovered that about 200 or more than 250 houses were built on the waterways. And those houses were removed completely in 2018. And by 2019, 2020, we had nothing much in Lokogoma. And then we moved to Galadima roundabout. The same thing, Galadima roundabout, I always say, is the hub of about more than 8 area and districts where water discharge. And because of the constructions going on, the channel was tampered with. And also that we work on in 2019, 2020. As at 2020, there was nothing much in Galadima roundabout and the environment. And then when you come to others, the city flooding, where you have water running on the road, it is because of the blockages of the manholes and also drainages. And these are very critical, and we brought in both the stakeholders involved, the development control, the engineering design and engineering services departments, and then all other stakeholders, the Abuja Environmental Protection Board, the facility maintenance and management also, who are critical stakeholders and responders of those areas. And we discovered that those blockages, the drainages were desilted, but along the line, you find out that people were throwing waste indiscriminately, especially the can bottles. And these are coming to block the conscripted, in quotes, culverts, box culverts, and other runways. So therefore, that is what is the cause of those blockages in Gwarimpa and other areas during the when it is raining. But all these are being identified because before the rainfall, as I said, we have carried out the the mapping of the FCT. We have carried out the survey and also identified, assessed those areas that are likely to cause flooding. And we were able to discover those conscripted areas, and we brought in all the stakeholders, and they are working. As I'm talking to you, they are working because the Honorable Minister has given them an express directive that they must ensure that those areas that are man-made conscripted areas should be removed with immediate effect. And development control is working. The environmental is also working in evacuating waste. But mark you, like we always say, Abuja is overpopulated. The waste generated in Abuja is not, it can't be estimated because of the little facilities. The facilities made in Abuja was not meant for this larger population. And therefore we expect as soon as you evacuate waste, you see that another is coming up. So as we are even lucky, some people are putting the waste where it is supposed to be. Others are just dumping it when they see a cloud, they will just dump it in the waterways and drainages so that they expect the water to carry it. And that is what is causing the flash flooding in the city. So we are really working hard, and I'm sure in the next few weeks, before we get arrested by the flood, a lot of things will be done in the FCT with the resolution we had last week by all the stakeholders.
Okay, Abbas Idris, thanks. Well, we have a number of areas still pending, and I'm sure that if our viewers were to send in their comments, say on the FCT, using our Facebook address there at NTA GMN, they will invite your attention to a number of locations where urban flooding is taking place. I mean, you talked about deseating the drains and clearing other locations. The border area between Utako and Jabi, for instance, where you have a lot of transport companies, you can see, apart from the traffic lights there, which are poorly set because they don't control traffic the way they ought to do. You can see that intersection is a T-junction. It's virtually giving way on account of flooding. So that's one area you may wish to take a look at. But we'll return to you in the course of the conversation once again, Abbas. Let's come back to Professor Mansour Matazu of NAMED. Our agriculture largely remains rain-fed. In other words, farmers would rely on the rainfall patterns and so on and so forth. I was listening to Al Hassan Nuhu, and he seemed to say, if I heard him correctly, that there might be some unusual rainfall patterns, unusual in terms of cessation in some parts that might result in drought or otherwise. And yet we're discussing flooding. Could you clarify that, assuming that is on the cards, in terms of cessation of rainfall or very poor amount of rainfall?
Okay, thank you very much. It's quite correct that you made mention that in the country the pattern of agriculture, more than 90% is rain-fed, and rainfall is variable, and that shows that the agricultural sector requires up-to-date information regarding what we call rainfall effectiveness. How effective is the rain? Even in above normal rainfall year, if the rainfall pattern is not effective, it can affect agriculture. Effective in the sense that there are about 4 to 5 components of the rainfall that is very useful for agriculture. You have the onset, and that onset is not the first rain. It's when you have accumulated amount of rainfall that establish soil moisture to about 50 to 60%, which will allow germination when you plant seeds. And also the other component is the length of the growing season, and that is the number of days that the hydrological growing season extends. And the other one is total rainfall amount, and of course the cessation period. And cessation is the end of the rainfall, not the last rain, but few weeks or days before the last rain, where moisture goes down to about 25%. So these attributes of the rain are what farmers require to plan and making decision for the type of seeds to use, and also we also detail other components of the rainfall pattern. Especially, we issue out a crop climate calendar for the farmers so that they plan their activities from the onset to cessations. So even in a normal year, as we made mention, we are witnessing global climate change. And also, NAMID is having record and available data as far back as 1887. And based on that, our analysis indicates that also in Nigeria, we are having localized indicators of climate change. And one of these indicators is change in the rainfall pattern. And within this change is the change, the onset beginning is becoming late, and also the cessation is coming early. And that's shortening the lifespan. And with this shortening of the lifespan, we always advise farmers that they will have to adapt by using early maturing seeds and also drought-resistant seeds. Within a season, we issue out another component of the rainfall pattern, which is a dry spell forecast. That dry spell is just like you are used to taking breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you now skip lunch. So in between breakfast and lunch, you might go hungry. So dry spell comes after the onset, rainfall is well established, and then you have period of between 7-10 days to about 3 to 4 weeks of absence of rain. And that is when the seedlings are young and requires tendering and requires moisture. So in our focus, we issued out some of the states that you made mention of Sokoto, Kebbi, part of Zamfara, and even in the south around Abuja, that they're going to experience this dry spell. And presently is what is happening even in parts of Katsina State. After the rains got established by late June, and then no rain. So we provide this early warning so that, and in parts of our focus at the national level, we do downscaling to state levels. And this downscaling, we normally collaborate with state governments and other development partners like Federal Ministry of Agriculture and IFAD to downscale this focus and give farmers this specific information and areas and time of this dry spell for them to adapt to. And part of our downscaling roving workshop, we train extension officers with this information, and also we have collaboration with Institute of Agricultural Research for Agricultural Research, IAR, and NRLS. And with this, they are responding by coming up with seeds varieties that normally adapt to this changing climate. So what we tell farmers and users of our focus in the agricultural sector is to try to use the climate information. Globally, it has been established that if you use weather climate information in agricultural sector, you stand to gain more than 35 to 40% yield, increase in yield, and also reducing risks of vagaries of weather by about 90%. So the whole issue is compliance, try to comply. And I will add here also, our focus in the climate value cycle, our role is to produce the forecast. And then the second role is for the enablers, like Alassane Nuhu in NEMA, like Federal Ministry of Agriculture. So by the time they consume the information, they now relay the information to the users. And then also we get feedback. So we have different products, even beyond the seasonal climate prediction. We provide 10 days agro-meteorological bulletin. We also provide 7 days update of our forecast. On daily basis also, even on NTA, we provide, even though the time is very short, we're trying to see how we can get this extended so that we detail to Nigerians, especially the agricultural sector, which feed the nation. So we really have to adapt to this changing climate. So this is my say from this.
Yes, what has explained, Kingsley, appears scientific, because...
Is it appears or it is?
Well, of course, and our farmers, one wonders if our farmers can actually, key into what you have just explained, because I don't know much of the extension workers we have now in Nigeria that will be able to assimilate this information and be able to pass it on to local farmers that we have who are largely illiterate. So that's a very good point to me. Thank you, sir. Let me go to Clement once more. We have identified the types of flooding that are going to be falling in Nigeria within a short period of time. That's if it has not started in some areas. And one wonders if you also provide any form of remediation measures to enable people who live in coastal areas and also those who are living in areas that are contiguous to ocean or rivers that may overflow as have predicted, to be able to begin now to take these measures very seriously to mitigate the flooding that we are all expecting. In your predictions, are there components of remediation measures put in place? And again, how are you passing this information to states and local government areas? Are they heeding to this information in terms of a practical plan, to see how they can key into this information and make adequate use of it before the flooding comes?
Okay, thank you. You see, the work of the agency, the Nigeria Hydrological Service Agency, is more of advisory. We predict it. I mean, the issue of flooding, we predict it ahead of time. We notify various levels of government. Like as we speak, each governor in Nigeria has a document from our agency, even one endorsed by the Honorable Minister of Water Resources to each of the governors in Nigeria. And each governor was informed, these are the local government areas in your state that you should watch out for in the course of the year. That was in May. And even before May, we also were on air to alert the nation of the possible flooding in 2021. But it was in May that the Honorable Minister was specific as to the locations. He endorsed letters to each of the governors. And they were told, these are the places you should watch out for. And then what are the action that needs to be taken? It is to be taken, or they are supposed to be taken by the state governments, not NISA, not Abuja. The people are in the states. The areas that are forecasted, predicted to be flooded, are in the states. And there is a level of government, state and local government in those states. And in each of the states in Nigeria, you have some agencies that are laden with some responsibilities. Each state has town planning authorities that have the powers conferred on them to take necessary actions in terms of demolition structure that are within the flood plains. But we don't have that capacity. We don't have that enabling law. But ours is to predict and inform the states. And then among the things that should be done, you see, it keeps bothering us as an agency, or those of us who are in hydrology. The amount of water we waste in Nigeria is quite humongous. I have participated at several fora internationally where we are discussing about the issue of water. The riparian countries that share rivers Niger and Benue. And at the end of the day, they will pose a question to Nigeria, which we are not able to answer. What is that? We were saying that what we call threshold, each country, you shouldn't take more than certain percentage of the water that is passing through your territory, so that others downstream will have water to make use of. In fact, Nigeria began to negotiate 5% of whatever water that is passing through, like Mali or Guinea, for instance, where Nigeria comes from. You shouldn't spend more than 5%. That was Nigeria's position. So that if you come to Mali, don't take more than 5%. But at the end of the day, Nigeria, the other countries, as it were, ganged up and it came to 25%. They will take about 25% and let the other ones come down. Then the question posed to Nigeria is this. The water that comes to you, what do you do with it? We inflow into Nigeria from River Benue and River Niger. Inflow into Nigeria combined together per annum is less than 68 billion cubic meters of fresh water if you combine the two. But by the time River Niger opens its mouth in the Atlantic Ocean, it's over 210 billion cubic meters of fresh water annually. This information is known to us, in Nigeria. It is known to other riparian countries that utilize the River Niger and Benue. They know this. The question is this: what do you do with that comes to you? Why do you ask us not to take more? Now, we have already been asking, advising state governments. There are things you can do to arrest this water, part of it, passing through your territory. It's like gold. If a country like Morocco should see this, we're talking about one country, so they say, allow about 3 or 5 times in a year, rain falls. For the moderate country in Africa. I think, is it Ethiopia or so? About 5 times in a year. So if they should see this, that's why even a country like Ethiopia is ready to go to war with Egypt. But Ethiopia is building their dam, Grand Renaissance Dam. But Egypt says you shouldn't build it on River Nile because Egypt is downstream of Ethiopia. But Ethiopia has gone ahead to build their dam. So what are we saying? We've been advising state governments, maybe Kebbi State, for instance, Niger State, Adamawa. Why not create another city by diverting a portion of that water, certain meters wide, certain meters deep, and then channel it to a virgin land and create a big reservoir there, like what we have here, what we call Jabi Lake. When you build it, it has a lot of impacts within that vicinity. It cools the atmosphere, it charges the aquifer, people come there to settle and do their businesses. You can have a battery of such facilities, channelization in each state and all the states that are contiguous to rivers Niger and Benue. That will go a long way to reduce the amount of flooding. So these are some of the things we are telling the government to do. Arrest this water, not allow it to pass. And it happens annually. More than 200 billion cubic meters of fresh water. We lose it, and when you lose it, you have lost it. But other countries don't have even 1/50th of what Nigeria have. And they're making headways with water. So we can't enforce any regulation among the states or on this. We can't impose anything on them. Only that the federal government, which has the agencies that predict, the forecasting agencies like NIMET, NISA, will do our own part of the business. The states are supposed to follow suit. They have the recommendation of what they should do to avoid the flooding in their states.
I just wonder, this is a new dimension you just raised, Engineer Nze, as with regard to what state governments can undertake in order to trap fresh water in their locations. I mean, the common experience we always discuss on Good Morning Nigeria has to do with irrigation. To say the federal government has already built a number of water bodies by way of dams and so on and so forth. So why don't you tap from what the federal government already has, usually for 3 purposes: industrial, agricultural, and domestic. But now you've also raised this whole idea of how to build new cities and channel waters there too. Maybe it's an issue that we'll pursue at some point. I know that Professor Emmanuel Adanu of the Water Research Institute is also very passionate about this. At some point, I recall we were discussing recharging Lake Chad, which has shrunken to just about 10% of its original size some decades ago. And the question then came, is it not possible to channel water, from all kinds of sources? It was said to be an expensive project, but I think that these are ideas that we'll chew on. But thanks a lot, Engineer Nze, for the very brilliant points that you have raised. I want to bring in again Al Hassan Nuhu, who is Director of Planning, Research and Forecasting for NEMA. But before we bring in Al Hassan, we're going to have to take a short break because I know that when you respond to the question, that might eat into a commercial break. It's Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation. right, you're welcome back. And I said Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Just before I went on the break, I was getting in Al Hassan Nuhu one more time of NEMA. Al Hassan, tell us in greater detail what the shared responsibilities are in seeking to mitigate the impact of flooding for this year and beyond. As we have indicated from the expert reports, 121 local government areas will be heavily impacted, some 300 or so will be less impacted, but still they will experience some flooding. Yes, you've indicated what NEMA is doing in terms of strategies and so on and so forth, but we've always known over the years that with the exception of a few states, a number are laggards. What is changing this year in terms of their awakening to this outlook of pending disaster if nothing happens?
Yeah. Thank you very much. As we all know, every disaster is a local event. Every disaster happens in one community, in one local government, in one state. So to be able to mitigate and respond appropriately and efficiently to disaster, there has to be a system that guarantees cooperation between the federal, the state, the local government, and the communities. Each strata of government has responsibility to undertake. Just as NEMA has produced contingency plan, has a response mechanism, has trained its own stakeholders, has mapped the critical, the highly probable areas, has done contingency stockpiling, has prepared the minds of the general public. The same is expected at the state level. We have encouraged them, we have engaged them to produce their own local contingency plan, to produce, to also use the existing mappings that was done together with them to create temporary shelters that will accommodate victims of flood disaster. And also to ginger their ministries, departments, and agencies. Of course, when flood happens, the Ministry of Health will be needed to provide drugs and medicaments. Water resources will be needed to provide water, sanitation, and hygiene. Ministries of Women Affairs will be required to provide protection for the rights of the IDP, those who are affected with the disaster. So as we are strategizing at the federal level, we are encouraging and partnering with the states to ensure that they are also prepared. We are also urging them, the states, working with them to build the capacities at the local government level. We are going beyond the 3 tiers of government to engage the communities, to use volunteers. We are using the NYSC Volunteer Corps together with the state government and the local government authorities. We are using local volunteers because when emergencies happen, even a passerby has a role to play. You have to gauge, you have to prepare them for them to be able to provide. Who do they call? When you are passing by and you see a flood disaster, who do you call? What do you do immediately before the line authorities come in? The states have increasingly been bracing up to these challenges. You'll be surprised to know that states have begun to have their own contingency plans. They have begun to have their contingency stockpiling, and they are working in the area of mapping, in the area of sensitization, in the area of building, erecting temporary shelters. We are only urging them to do more, and not only the states. The line ministries, departments, and agencies at the federal level, the line ministries, departments, and agencies at the state level, the military, the police, the fire service, the health authorities, everybody needs to brace up this onerous responsibility. This is not a time for complacency because you have the plans, you have the infrastructures. What we need to have is vigilance to be able to save lives of Nigerians and to provide the needed succor when the disaster happens.
I'm sorry to jump in here. I mean, we've been taking on the issue of annual rainfall prediction and flooding for a number of years now on Good Morning Nigeria. But you just said something that is probably heartwarming. You said that a number of states are now beginning to develop their own response plan to mitigate this. This is heartwarming because, Kirian, if you recall, a couple of years ago on Good Morning Nigeria, we were informed that one state emergency management agency had only 2 employees, 2.
But you know, he has not given us details of this preparedness by the states, right? Because,
well, he's not a state official. So.
Exactly, but perhaps he was talking as somebody who has detailed information
Yes.
about how the states are getting prepared for this. Because what often happens is that when the flood sets in, what we hear is disaster all over the country. No single state, even last year, 2 years ago, that comes up to say, look, like, this is what we have done to mitigate this flood. That is the point.
Well, the states definitely are not moving on at the same pace.
Exactly.
But I tell you, there are states, like Niger State, I know, they have gone very far in the area of flooding. They have identified, they have even erected temporary shelter, and they move to talk to the people. Even if you can't move permanently out of these flood areas, they move them out at the critical hour before the flood comes, and then they come back. Some states are doing what is expected of them. Of course, some are lagging behind, and we are urging those that are lagging behind to brace off. But some, like Lagos State, they have done wonderful. They are doing wonderfully well in the area of flood mitigation and control. Some states are moving in the right direction. Some states are lagging behind. So what you do is to have a system. That's why we do courtesy visits, to urge those who are lagging behind to brace up to the challenges.
All right, thank you. Abbas Idris, coming here again, I do hope that FCT is not lagging behind, you know, because if he lags behind, of course, you know, it's the capital city of Nigeria, so you can't afford to do that. Now, it is inevitable that we're going to have flood. Nobody knows the extent in terms of volume, but we're going to have it. So what is the FCT doing differently to ensure that this year's flooding would not be as disastrous as the ones we had in the past?
Well, I was surprised. I thought Hassan Nuhu would first talk about his landlord, the FCT, but he went on to talk about Niger State. I'm sure FCT is doing great in terms of the mitigation of the flooding. We have done a lot, and we are doing a lot of sensitization. In fact, when we are talking of volunteers, vanguards, we have over 1,000 of them well trained, and we have over 60 divers, local divers that are receiving modern training in terms of mitigating the flood, to ensure that because we believe that they are the first responders in their own locality. And what we are trying to do now also is to build community resilience among all the communities, because we are carrying out the campaign door to door, and then using their town criers, and also using the leadership of the community. And we have selected some leaders in the communities that will give them the training, and then the training is going to be cascaded down to the communities, which is going to be regular. We may not have time to be visiting the community, but once we build the resilience of the communities, we believe that the community leaders will now be reporting back to us the happenings, and then also where they need support. Apart from that, we are also trying to create a forum of estate developers the Forum of Estate Developers, because we found out that most of the violations are done by the estate developers. So we have to target them, we have to bring them together, and then ensure that we have the master plan of the FCT, and then also the drainages and the floodplain are not violated. We are going to do that so that we take it. And then we also make sure that those developers have their own response plans as well in each estate, because the disaster management is not just for the response agencies. Apart from that, our main mandate is to be the lead coordinating agencies. So therefore, if we are to participate fully, we have to bring everybody, and everybody in the sense that the household is a stakeholder. They have to have their own response plan as well, and they have to have their own evacuation plan as well. So these are the things that we map out that we are trying to do to ensure that we have safety in the FCT. Like I said, FCT is overpopulated, and what we can only do is to involve everybody, to all inclusive. Our local divers are receiving modern training as I'm talking to you. We are equipping them with the modern gadgets. They used to carry out rescue with calabash and rubber jerrycans and all these things. We have discarded that. We have bought canoes, and we are also having inflated boats, which is going to be used for in any eventuality. So FCT, Emergency Management Agency, has been on the top of all the situations. We are not mindful of also the some challenges that we face, but then we will have to do the best we can to ensure that we keep FCT as safe as it is, and then we also make sure that the master plan is not violated, and we also make sure that every community is carried along, because we cannot do it alone. Every office and ministries should also have their own response plan. That is how it should be in every organization. But when you move out, you move into inspecting, you see that even evacuation plan in a building is a problem. And so if at home, the household does not know if there is flood, how to even get out of the house. And that is why most of them are trapped. We are trying to do that. We have a lot in our hands, but we cannot do it alone. We have to bring everybody together to ensure that we coordinate and ensure that this thing is done to ensure safety in the FCT. Above all, I also want to use this opportunity to call on taking the risk management aspect into perspective. Whatever we are doing, planning, we have to factor the risk management into it. That is why in most buildings you find out that there are no emergency exit. In whatever we are doing, we don't anticipate any risk that is going to happen, and the risk is there to live with us as far as human being is concerned. So therefore, we have to take risk management perspective into cognizance in anything that we are doing as a government or as a family. Thank you.
Abbas Idris, thank you very much. But I wanted to take this question very quickly so that we can get the closing thoughts of the other guests. Now, we have a challenge usually in this country. If you demolish structures, the previous owners always have a habit of returning to the same land, obviously maybe because they don't have access to another land, and then they start rebuilding. Those properties that were on waterways in Lokogoma that were taken down officially, have you revisited to be sure that there's been no redevelopment in those locations? Because Lokogoma was always in the news during the rainy season. Apart from that tragic incident involving the director, there was a family man who was taking two of his children to school one day, and I'm sure that was a very terrible story. All got swept away.
With the case of Lokogoma and another part of the FCT, it made us to set up a monitoring unit. The monitoring unit is to ensure that wherever we go, we pass a verdict on any building, or we remove any building. The monitoring unit will follow back to ensure that that has not come back again. And I must commend the communities, the residents of the Lokogoma area, who who are putting in their best now as I'm talking to you. And that is why I said we will continue to build the resilience. They have been involved in preventing flooding from happening. As I'm talking to you right now, they have been carrying out some community work among themselves to ensure that nobody build or dump refuse around that area to block the drainages. And you know, Lokogoma is their own case is peculiar because there is no infrastructural development. They hurriedly moved there, and that is why they had that event. But as I'm talking to you, the community is really building itself, bringing itself together, working hard, hand in hand to ensure that nobody builds back to block the waterways. And if there is that kind of ownership in all the communities, I think we are going to remain safe. So this is what we want to emphasize and to ensure that we really build in that kind of community relationship.
All right. Now back to Professor Mansour Bako-Matazu. As a closing thought, you have made your predictions. And let me just ask you this. Do we expect any kind of change from your predictions with respect to the issue of climate change? Because the climate change effect comes in at will. Are we expecting any change in that the pattern that you have predicted already?
Yeah, actually, thank you so much. As we know, atmosphere is always in motion, and our work is to monitor the physical and dynamic processes in the atmosphere. So to address this, focus always requires an update, and so we provide a monthly update of the pattern changes towards that. But the latest update we are having is that substantial part of the northern states are going to have above normal rainfall. And as made mention by NISA, that is the upstream of the country. So large volume of water will tend to move within the north central and then eventually get evacuated through the Niger Delta. So for north central states also we're expecting normal and few areas of above normal and pockets of below normal, and substantial part of the southern part of the country will have normal and a little portion of below normal. So the focus still stands as we predicted, that in generality the country is going to have normal to above normal rainfall. And that is a very key concern, especially with regard to flood events. So coming into this is a response, it's a local response to climate change. And one of this effect is the increasing extreme events. So areas of wetness will begin to have more wet, get more wet, and then also areas of dry spell will tend to be more severe. So to address this in NIMET, we are moving from making just a focus of that it will rain over Abuja, Lokoja, and Port Harcourt, and moving into a new paradigm shift of impact-based forecast. What will happen over Port Harcourt? The amount of rain, and what will be the impact? How will that rainfall generate this volume of floods and other impacts to other socioeconomic components of the country. And to address this, there's a component in climate services value chain we call user communication. We take it very serious in NIMET. We do a lot of stakeholder communication project and then stakeholders workshop and roving seminars. So from 2019 to date, we've been translating our seasonal climate prediction to the 3 major languages. And also our interaction with the extension officers, we always allow them to talk to the farmers with the language they understand. Some of them, they dramatize even the process. And during our annual release with our minister, we normally invite these people and they come to testify. So in a nutshell, what we're saying that if you take up weather climate early warning system, you tend to save 8 naira. If you spend 1,000 naira to provide early warning system, you are saving 8 naira. So you are saving Al Hassan from spending 8 naira in terms of relief rehabilitation. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Prof. Clement Nze, in terms of the flood outlook and what we might experience in different parts of the country, what would be your closing thoughts, very quickly? What would you like to see done?
My closing thoughts are from what the DG NIMET mentioned, climate variability, so that you are now having late onset of rainy season and early cessation. which compresses the days, months, or weeks of rainfall to a shorter period, meaning you'll be having more rainfall over a shorter period, which will translate to more flooding. That have spread over many days or weeks. So we should be expecting more flood years to come, like we mentioned earlier on. We just entered into July, September, or August is there, September is there. So we should be more prepared to face the realities.
All right, sir. At this point, gentlemen, we'd like to call it a day and appreciate you for your wonderful contribution to this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, the first edition for the week. Engineer Clement is the Director General of Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning. Thank you. Professor Manso Bako Matazu, Director of Nigeria Meteorological Agency. Thank you indeed for coming. And Al-Hassan Nuhu, who is the Director, Planning, Research and Forecasting, NEMA. Thank you indeed for being here this morning. Abbas Idris, Director General, FCT Emergency Management Agency. We also appreciate you for sharing your thoughts with us on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, so that's the program for today. As always, we're back tomorrow, same time, 7 in the morning. Until then, do take care of yourself. I am Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kurian Umar. You do have a great day.